So welcome everybody. It's great to see all of you. And thank you to everybody who signed in today to this meeting. This is a meeting of the Canadian Association for Girls in Science, or CAGIS, and we have a really special meeting today. Our subject for today is paleontology, and we have two special guests. Welcome everybody. It's great to see all of you. And thank you to everybody who signed in today to this meeting. This is a meeting of the Canadian Association for Girls in Science.
Oh, there we go. So I'll just take over briefly. So CAGIS is a club for girls aged 7 to 16, and we have chapters across the country that have monthly events where we visit with experts in science, technology, trades, engineering, and math to do fun hands-on activities. Those activities are normally around an hour and a half in length, where we get to go into the lab, into the field, to do those types of fun things. Because we can't meet in person right now, we're all meeting virtually. So we're having these live sessions every week, and we've got a really special live session this week because we're so excited to have some special guests. First, I'm gonna go in reverse order. So I'm gonna start off with our CAGIS members. So we've got some CAGIS members, Tula and Mayim. If you two just want to give a wave, and if Catherine can spotlight their videos, then we can see those two. And I'm just pausing. There we go. So hi, Tula and Mayim. We have Shifa. Let's go over to Shifa, and she's waving there. We have Obiaku and Buife, so let's head over to their video. And we have Dr. Jordan Mallon from the Canadian Museum of Nature. He is our paleontologist for today, so we're just going to head over to his video to spotlight. And I'm saving, I think, maybe the most exciting for last. We have Dana Jane with us today, and I'm going to send it over to Dana to say a big hello to everyone. Oh, and your sound is really quiet, just so you know, Dana.
Oh, that's not good.
It's better now. We're good.
Oh, okay, maybe I was too far away from the camera. I'll come a little closer. Hi,
everyone. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We are going to start out with a little bit of an explanation from Jordan about some paleontology and dinosaur questions, and then we're going to do an activity, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So I'm going to send it over to Dr. Jordan for our paleontology information.
Awesome. Thanks, Larissa. Well, thanks, girls, for joining us today. I'm Dr. Jordan Mallon, and I should introduce my sidekick here. This is my daughter, Riley. So she's going to be helping me with the activity later, which is why she's here. But first, I'm going to share a slide presentation that I have, which will sort of set us up for the activity that we're going to be doing shortly. So can everybody see my screen here okay?
Yes.
I'm seeing thumbs up, so I'll assume we're a go. Awesome. So as I mentioned, I'm Jordan Mallon, a paleontologist at the Canadian Museum of Nature. I'm a dinosaur paleontologist myself, but we have other paleontologists at the museum too. We have paleontologists who study fish. We have paleontologists who study mammals. We have paleontologists who study fossil reptiles that are not dinosaurs. So I'm the dinosaur paleontologist, and normally I'd be working out of this building in Ottawa, or in the collections building, which is a different building altogether. But this is the Canadian Museum of Nature, and sadly, due to this COVID crisis, the museum is closed now, and so I'm forced to work from home. But I'm being productive anyways, doing stuff like this, which I'm happy to do. So thanks to CAGIS for having me. And when you don't find me at home or in my office, usually you can find me places like this. These are Badlands within Canada. And this is where I like to collect dinosaurs. And I think we've got a poll set up for this. So I'm going to throw out a question, and all the girls watching today can answer on the poll. So my question for you girls is this: which Canadian province contains the most dinosaurs? Where do we find most of the dinosaur fossils in Canada? So you should be able to vote in the poll now. Those of you watching live on Zoom can see our options. Is it British Columbia? Is it Alberta? Is it Ontario, New Brunswick, or Nunavut? Which province in Canada has most of Canada's dinosaur fossils? So everyone's voting right now, and looks like Alberta's in the lead, but British Columbia and Nunavut are not far behind. And so I'm going to let our CAGIS leaders to count down the poll, and then I'll announce the results, I think.
Okay, so the poll is going to close in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And poll closed.
Poll closed.
And actually, I'm going to ask Dana, what do you think? Do you know the answer to this?
I think Alberta. Am I right?
Dana, are you just saying that because that was #1 in the poll?
No, I can't. I couldn't see the poll.
Oh,
I can't see the poll from my end.
well,
I think Dana's a pretty expert paleontologist.
she's got the hang of this, I have to say. And she'd be right too, because it's true. We find most of Canada's dinosaurs in Alberta. So to those of you girls who got it right, good on you. There was about half of you there. So well done. We do find dinosaurs in British Columbia. We find them in Nunavut as well, but we have not found dinosaurs yet in New Brunswick or Ontario. So yes, normally I'd be in the field right now collecting dinosaurs, but of course that's not happening either with all the travel restrictions. And so here's some examples of some dinosaur fossils that my team and I have collected over the years. I'll use my cursor here to point some things out. So this is me with a turtle fossil that we just found. This is actually the fossil of a soft-shelled turtle, which are still around with us today. Here's an example. This is a cool fossil that my field assistant Margaret found. She normally works in the collections of the museum, and she found this snout of a horned dinosaur called Centrosaurus. You can see the big horn over the nose here, and the beak is kind of coming off to the side here. That was a really cool find. We found footprints here. This is kind of a badly eroded footprint, but there would be 3 toes coming off the foot. There's 1 in the middle, 2 on the side, and a 3rd would be coming off here, but it's sort of eroded there. Here's Margaret again collecting another turtle. We've also got Scott with a duck-billed dinosaur leg, kind of badly beaten up, and some raptor claws and tyrannosaur teeth too there. So we find all kinds of really cool fossils. But I want to throw out another question, and maybe Dana, I'll ask this of you, okay? I know you're our paleontologist in training here, and I'm sure we've got lots of other girls who are paleontologists in training here. So I'm going to put you to the test, okay?
Okay.
How are fossils formed? How do we make a fossil?
And before Dana answers, maybe we can just ask if any of our participants on the live session want to type in answers into the chat, so that I know that Dana's got a good answer that she's going to say, but we can also let some of our live participants chime in there.
Yeah, there's not necessarily one correct answer to this question. So I think if we pool our minds together, we can probably come up with a number of good answers. So the question again is how are fossils formed? How do we make a fossil?
Seeing some answers come in. Oh, lost my screen for a second.
So I'm seeing some answers come in. And Dana, what do you think? And then maybe we can compare your answer to our participants' answers.
So I'm just gonna say what I think because I'm not quite sure. But we all know that fossils are found in the ground. Paleontologists have to dig them up. So they are, as the years go by, they go deeper and deeper into the layers of the earth, and they get covered with things like mud and rock. and sand. So I think that's my answer, but I'm not sure if it's right. Science is always about asking questions. So
I'm seeing a lot of answers here. I'm seeing one, someone said sand. Chloe says the animal dies, gets covered with dirt and it sinks down. Tula and Mayim say that they're left there and get buried. Hassini says, for example, a fish gets stuck in mud and in 100 years it turns into rock, and that's how the fossil is made. So I'm hearing different answers, but they've all got the same and correct idea that after an animal dies, it gets buried somehow. There's all kinds of ways we might bury an animal. And over time, that the sediment, we call it, that might be dirt or sand or mud or silt, builds up and builds up on top of the animal. And over a period of thousands and millions of years, that pressure builds up and the heat builds up too as the fossil becomes more deeply buried underground. It preserves the skeleton. As all the soft tissue rots away, it preserves the skeleton as a fossil. And Amna says a fossil is a bone of any animal that gets covered in sand and mud. That's right. It doesn't have to be a dinosaur fossil. I think that's a good point worth making. A lot of people think of dinosaurs, or I should say a lot of people think of fossils that think of dinosaurs, but not all fossils are dinosaur fossils. You can have fossil fish, you can have fossil snakes, you can have fossil, horses. They're not all dinosaurs. Dinosaurs just get a lot of the credit, much to the chagrin of some of my co-workers who don't work on dinosaurs. But I do, so that's where my mind goes right away. So those are all really good answers. So again, yeah, we need sediment to bury a dinosaur. We need something like sand. And if we were to go to Alberta 75 million years ago, where the rocks that I work in were laid down, Alberta would have looked something like this at that time. So very green, lots of these big, winding, meandering rivers rolling across the landscape. And living along the edges of those rivers and further out would have been dinosaurs, big dinosaurs, little dinosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, horned dinosaurs, tyrannosaurs, all kinds of these dinosaurs. And when they died, their bodies would sometimes fall into a river. Maybe they died on the edge of the river. Maybe over time, of course, rivers are very dynamic. That means they're always moving. They're always shifting across the landscape. So maybe one of these elbows in the river moved its way over, carved out the land, and washed a dinosaur carcass into it. And I've got another slide here to show kind of what I'm talking about. There's a lot of words on this slide. Don't worry, you don't need to remember any of those. All I'm trying to show here is a cutaway of the land where a river is. And you can see that as a river moves its way, carves its way through the landscape, it leaves behind it layers and layers and layers of sand and silt. And over periods of millions and millions of years, these layers of sand and silt build up on top of one another. And by doing that, if we were to bury a dinosaur under those layers, we could create a fossil. So this is, I just have a slide here showing a dinosaur maybe dying at the edge of a river. You can see its head kind of in the water here. And then the water, maybe there's a flood and the water raises up in that river. So it kind of buries the dinosaur. And as rivers are flowing, they're always washing they're always washing sand and mud downstream with it. And so they deposit that sand and mud all along the side banks, all along the bottom of the river. And so we can bury that dinosaur skeleton under all that sand and under all that mud. And it gets pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. There's lots of pressure. There's lots of heat. If you bury a fossil deep enough, of course, it gets warmer towards the center of the earth. And that helps to preserve the bones as a fossil. And then, of course, the Earth is always changing. It's a dynamic system. It's always, you know, the wind and the water flowing down at the rain tends to erode the rock. It eats away at the rock. And by doing that, we can expose fossils at the surface. And then this last part here, you can see a group of paleontologists finding this fossil that had been buried millions and millions of years ago. So this is really how we create a fossil. And if we go back to the Alberta Badlands, you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So at the top of the slide where this red arrow is, you can see, you can maybe make out some people on your screen. That's my crew from the Canadian Museum of Nature. So one area where we work out in the Badlands is what we call a bone bed. It's a mass death assemblage. It's a giant graveyard of horned dinosaurs called Centrosaurus. So that's what we're working on up here, this big graveyard of Centrosaurus. But what I want you girls to look at is this big cliff right next to us. You can see in this cliff, we've got layers and layers and layers of sediment, sand and mud and silt. And you can see they're kind of different colors. There's some whitish stuff here. There's some yellowish layers here, white, you know, grays and browns. There's even some purple up here. Actually, this purple up here is where we find this Centrosaurus bone bed, the Centrosaurus graveyard. And what I want to point out is these layers build one on top of the other. And so as you move from the bottom of what we call the rock column, the geological column, all the way up to the top, you get into younger and younger layers of rocks. So that's an important thing to remember, because our activity that we're going to be doing later sort of builds on this idea. It's called the principle of superposition. It's a very old geological terms. It's one of the first rules of geology is when you have layers of rocks, the oldest ones are at the bottom and the youngest ones are at the top. And so if we find dinosaurs buried in these rocks, we can have some idea as to which animal, which dinosaur was younger than another or older than another by looking to see which layers they're buried in. So I'm going to throw out, I think we have a poll question line up here. And my first question is this. We've got A, B, and C. Which dinosaur on your screen is the oldest? Is it A, is it B, or is it C? Which one is the oldest? Now I'm seeing the answers pop up. Nobody so far thinks B is the oldest, but some people, about 25% think it's C, and about 75% think it's A. And I'm gonna throw over to Larissa to give us a countdown to the end of our poll here.
Okay, so we've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and poll closed.
All right, I had to wet my whistle there. All right, the poll is closed, and most of you girls said A, which is that Tyrannosaur there at the bottom. And for those of you who answered A, all 11 of you, you would be right. The Tyrannosaur is the oldest, again, because it's at the bottom. As you go towards the bottom, you get older rocks. As you go towards the top, you get younger rocks. All right, and I think we have another question. Is that right? Do we have a poll coming up, Catherine? And that question would be, which dinosaur is the youngest? Do we have a poll for that? There we go. There we go. So which dinosaur is the youngest now? Is it A, is it B, or is it C? And I'm seeing you girls chiming in a lot quicker on this one. Everyone so far is voting for C. This might be a quick poll. Larissa, do you want to count us down?
Sure, we'll do it from 3 this time. So 3, 2, 1, and poll closed.
Cut it off. This is the first poll we've had where everyone answered the same and everyone got the question right. So very good. That's right. This animal here is at C. This is a horned dinosaur. That would be the youngest in this example. And of course, B is older than A and it's younger, or sorry, it's, see, even paleontologists get the answers wrong sometimes. B is younger than A, and it's older than C. So hopefully we've got all that in our heads now, because it's a rule that we use all the time when we're out in the field. All right, what else have I got to say here? Oh, I should say this. What we've been talking about so far is called relative dating. So we know the age of B in this case relative to A. We know it's younger. So when we're talking about relative dating, usually we're saying something is younger or older or the same age as something else. But of course, we often say, you know, that these rocks are 75 million years old or 65 million years old or something like that. In that case, that's something that we call absolute dating, where we're actually able to put a number on how old something is. And in places like Alberta, often we use layers of volcanic ash that we can do what's called radiometric dating on. And I'm not going to go into the details of radiometric dating, but just know that by studying the chemical makeup of that volcanic ash, like we have in these black dotted lines here, we can get absolute ages. So we can say, you know, that this ash along the bottom here is, let's say, 76 million years old, and this ash bed higher up is 75 million years old. And if we knew that the bottom one is 76 and the top one is 75 million years, we can therefore say that this ostrich mimic dinosaur B is between 76 and 75 million years old. Hopefully I didn't get my numbers messed up there. Sometimes I get them messed up, but this is how we put dates on things, by studying the ages of the rocks around the dinosaurs, and then we can know that the dinosaurs are either older or younger than those rocks. So hopefully that's clear. All right. And then I'm gonna finish with this slide here. By studying the fossil record in places all around the world, we can build up what's called, well, the big picture of the fossil record. And so there are rocks throughout the world from the Archean era, the Proterozoic, the Paleozoic era, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. And we can break those periods up into, or those eras up, I should say, into finer periods. But the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic all have very different fossils, which is why we distinguish between those three areas, the eras, I should say. So if we go back in time, you know, between about 250 to 542 million years ago, a long, long time ago, we would find a lot of ocean dwelling animals, things like trilobites and early fishes and sharks and shelly animals, all living at the bottom of the ocean. And at the end of the Paleozoic era, at 252 million years ago, there was a big, big extinction. And at that time, that extinction marked the beginning of the age of the dinosaurs, the Mesozoic era. So this is when we start to see dinosaurs evolve, things like, you know, Brontosaurus and Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops and everybody's favorite dinosaurs during the Mesozoic era. And then, of course, at the end of the Mesozoic era, we often talk about this big asteroid that came and hit the Earth. That marks the extinction of the dinosaurs. Then after the dinosaurs go extinct, except birds, right? Birds are dinosaurs. After the dinosaurs go extinct, we move into what's called the Cenozoic. So this is the age of the mammals. Like all of us, we're all mammals, but what are some other mammals we can think of? Let's say dogs and cats and bears, kangaroos, you name it. So that was about 66 million years ago was the start of the Cenozoic, and that leads up into the present day. And one more question I want to ask everyone. I don't know if we have a poll for this or if we want to use the Q&A for this, but my question is this. What percentage of life is preserved in the fossil record? How much of life, all of life that has ever lived, is preserved in the fossil record? And we do have it in a poll here. I'm glad to see that. So is it 100%? Is everything that has ever lived preserved in the fossil record? Is it 7%? Is it a very specific 25.8%? Or is it less than 1%? So what percentage of life that is ever, all life that has ever lived, how much of that is preserved in the fossil record?
And
go ahead, Larissa.
oh, and I think for this one, you can keep talking, Jordan, but we can send it over to Dana to do the countdown once we're ready. Okay. And was there anything else you wanted to add in about that, Jordan? If not, I think we're probably ready to do the countdown. I can't see the voting or what that looks like on my end. Oh, actually, I can vote. Hold on, I'm gonna vote.
I've said my piece, so Larissa, you vote, and then Dana, you can.
I voted, so now we're ready for the countdown.
Okay, I'll count down from 3. 3, 2, 1. The poll has closed.
The poll is closed. All right. And I see many of you fell for my trap. The number one answer, that is to say, the answer that most of the girls here voted for was 25.8%, a very specific number. But just because it's a specific number doesn't mean it's the right number. 2 of you voted for less than 1%, and it's those 2 of you who got the answer right. So give yourselves a pat on the back. That's the right answer. Less than 1% of life that has ever lived is preserved in the fossil record. So think about that. There's all kinds of life out there that we just don't know about, either because we haven't found it, maybe it's in the fossil record and we haven't found it yet, or it was never even preserved. So it's really mind-boggling when you stop to think about it. So yeah. Really cool. So we're gonna finish here. I've got a game. All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flash up some fossils, and I want you to tell me, or reconstructions of fossils, anyways. And I want you girls to tell me where in the rock record would we find them? Whether it be the Paleozoic era, or the middle there, the Mesozoic era, or more recently, the youngest era, the Cenozoic era. All right, so I think we have some polls to go with this.
Yes, we do.
We do, I'm glad to hear it. Thanks, Catherine. So my first question is this: where do we find horses? We do find horses in the fossil record. So which era do they come from? Are they in the Paleozoic era, the Mesozoic era, or the Cenozoic era?
And Dana, you take it away with the countdowns.
Okay, I'll wait a couple seconds until everyone has a chance to put their vote in.
I'll just say the Paleozoic era is kind of the era of very ancient life. That's what paleo refers to. Especially common are things like fishes and trilobites, and lots of sea-dwelling animals. Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs, and the Cenozoic is the age of mammals.
Okay, so I'm going to count it down now. I'm going to count down from 3. 3, 2, 1. The poll has closed.
Cut it off there. All right, thanks, Dana. And the number one answer with 12 votes, 71% of you said the Cenozoic, and 71% of you would be right. That's absolutely right. Where's my pointer here? There we go. The first horses show up in the Eocene period of the Cenozoic, so about 55 million years ago. Very good. Awesome. All right, we're going to go to another one. How about this funny looking creature here? These are animals called trilobites. And my question again is, where in the fossil record do we find trilobites? Are they in the Paleozoic? Are they in the Mesozoic? Or are they in the Cenozoic? I'm from Ottawa here. I'm living in Ottawa, and we do have a number of trilobites in Ottawa. We don't get dinosaurs. Sadly, I've got to travel to dig up dinosaurs, but I don't have to go far to find trilobites.
Okay, I think I'll count it down now. Okay, we're going to count down from 3. 3, 2, 1. The poll has closed.
And we had some last minute votes there, right under the gun. So most of you girls said the Paleozoic era, and you would be right. 94% of you said the Paleozoic, and I'm glad you got that. And if you didn't get it, there's a dead giveaway here. If you're looking at my cursor here, you can see some trilobites at the bottom here of the Paleozoic era. So very, very good. Whoop, where's my line? There we go. The trilobites belong in the Paleozoic, and they go extinct at the end of the Paleozoic as well. So trilobites did not live with dinosaurs. All righty, what's next? Ooh, Stegosaurus. I think this is a super popular dinosaur. Sadly, not one we have in Canada. Stegosaurus is known only from the United States. But again, my question for you is this: which era, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, or Cenozoic, which era did Stegosaurus live during? Which era can we find and dig up Stegosaurus fossils? Paleozoic, Mesozoic, or Cenozoic?
Okay, I'm going to wait a couple seconds until I count it down. Okay, hopefully everyone has gotten a chance to vote because I'm going to count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll has closed.
Awesome. I really like these poll things, I gotta say. Yeah,
They're fun.
they're fun. Yeah. And so it looks like most of you girls, 89% of you, 16 of you answered Mesozoic. And you would be absolutely right. Of course, the Mesozoic is the age of the dinosaurs, which I mentioned earlier. And of course, Stegosaurus is a dinosaur that lived during the Jurassic period. So very well done to those of you who got it right. And I've got one more, okay? One more, no prizes, I'm sorry. You get a pat on the back. This is gonna be a good one. This is an animal that we call a coelacanth. Big, ugly looking fish. What we call a lobe-finned fish. Very interesting animals because they're actually more closely related to humans than, let's say, a trout. They're actually on the line to what we call tetrapods or four-legged animals. Very strange fish. So, do we find coelacanths in the Paleozoic? Do we find them in the Mesozoic, or do we find them in the Cenozoic? There we go. Which era do we find coelacanths? Paleozoic, Cenozoic, or Mesozoic?
I'm going to wait a couple minutes. Well, maybe not a couple minutes, but a few seconds to make sure everyone has a chance to answer.
I'll say the answers are pretty split so far. More than some of the other ones.
Okay. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to put their votes in, and I'm going to count down from 5 to give you a little bit of extra time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll has closed.
All righty. The poll's closed. Let's go over the results. So I see that 78% of you voted Paleozoic, most of you. 22% voted Mesozoic, and 33%, I'm just thinking those numbers don't make any sense whatsoever, voted Cenozoic. It was kind of a trick question. I got yous again because the actual answer, whoop.
I think the numbers might not make sense because you can click on as many options as you want. So it might have counted some of us like twice or 3 times.
That would make more sense. But the answer is all 3. We find coelacanths throughout the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic. So I gotcha. This is, coelacanths are really cool. For a long time, we only knew about them from the fossil record. And yet, I think it was in the 1930s, somebody fished up in the oceans a living coelacanth. And so we came to learn that coelacanths are still living with us in the depths of the ocean today. And we only ever knew about them from their fossils originally. So it was a huge surprise to everyone. And just an amazing fact that this is such a long-lived group of fish that are still with us today. They're an example of what we might call a living fossil, because we found their fossils long ago, and yet they're still living with us today. So you fell for my trick. Use it as a learning experience. Yeah, amazing group of animals. So I think with that, we're going to end it there, and we're going to throw, I'll stop sharing here. We're going to throw to our activity next. We've got an activity to do. I don't know if Larissa or Catherine, if you want to sort of introduce the activity to do, but I'm happy to run through it once we've introduced it.
Sure. So Catherine, why don't you give it an introduction?
Sure. So we've talked about how you can tell where or how old a fossil is based on the depth. So we know that layers in the ground tell us different things about how old something is. So we've got an activity to kind of reproduce that idea, which I think, Jordan, is called stratification. Is that the right name for it?
Yeah, or stratification is just the building up of layers of rock. So I don't know if we have a name for this activity. It's the layers activity or the geological strata activity. But you're right, Catherine. It sort of introduces what we were talking about earlier, this idea that rocks build up from bottom to top, and we can tell the ages of things, or at least the relative ages of the fossils we find in those rocks based on where they are within the geological column.
So our CAGIS members have their supplies already, I think, right, everybody? Can you give me a thumbs up if you've got everything ready? Good stuff. For anybody who's participating at home, who's watching the YouTube live stream or who is in the meeting, here's what you'll need. You'll need to have a jar of some kind, or it could be a vase, or it could be even a tall drinking glass. Any of those things would be fine as long as you can see through it. And you need a minimum of 2 items that you can layer in the jar. So things that work really well, just things that you have around the house, could be 2 different kinds of cereal. It could be sand and sugar. I found oatmeal worked really well and rice worked really well. So anyway, if you're doing this activity, you need to have adult supervision, of course, and permission to use the supplies. You also need some toy dinosaurs or something that can stand in for a toy dinosaur. It could be another plastic toy of some kind. Yeah, I see some great examples here. Oh, that's really cool. Is that, Dana, is that a comb? That the little...
It might be hard to see on camera because it's white, but it's a little T-Rex skull.
It's a little T-Rex skull. Very cool.
Yes.
That makes a perfect fossil. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Jordan, if you're going to lead us through the activity.
Sure. So I'm gonna show off the sort of fossil record, the fossil record in a jar that I've made here. I made mine with different layers. I've got soil on the bottom, I used sand in the middle, and I used rocks on top. And this was my first shot at it. I found, you know, soil and sand and rocks difficult to use because when I put my toys and my fossils in there, often the sand would kind of get in the way and block the fossil. But I'm going to hold this up. I actually have some. I'm lucky to be a paleontologist because I actually have some real fossils that I can use. So we've got a piece of a turtle shell here, and a piece of crocodile armor here. It looks like a honeycomb here, and I've got a piece of dinosaur bone up here. But I wouldn't recommend, having gone through this, I wouldn't recommend using dirt because it's heavy. It tends to block your fossils. What I'd rather do is found that it works much better. It doesn't block the view of the toy dinosaurs that you have. So I just have like some flake cereal here and some you know, some bran cereal and shreddies here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to have my lovely assistant Riley help me with this. So get your jar, and we're going to start to put our layers of cereal into our jar. So I'd recommend whatever you have that's the finest material. Maybe that's rice, maybe that's sand or something else. I would use that for the bottom so it doesn't sink through the bigger pieces up top. In my case, we're going to use raisin bran here. So Riley, do you want to pour that in?
So if we could spotlight Dana's video, I see that she's got something that, what do you have as your bottom layer there?
I didn't have 2 types of cereal, so I'm using 1 type of cereal, and I'm going to be using some dry beans.
Great. So I'm going to try this activity too. I've got some rice for my bottom layer, and then I've got some cereal for my next layer. I'm going to stand up to do this, but you get to see my favorite dinosaur outfit, which is my dinosaur sweatshirt. I know Dana has her paleontology outfit too that she uses. So why don't we head over to see some of our other participants? What is Shifa doing?
I have lentils here, if you can see, and I have some dried pasta here.
That'll work.
And Obiaku and we've got Tula and Mayim. How are you two doing?
Well,
Oh, good. You're pouring stuff in there.
yep. We have some dry oatmeal. We have dry rice and some Rice Krispies.
And what about Obiaku and Buife?
In my first layer, it's my T-Rex.
I just heard that Dana has her first layer in there. So why don't we go take a look at her video and see where she is with her layering?
Sure. So I have to move these guys around a little bit, but I am just about to start my second layer. You can kind of see, you know, I have my cereal now, but I have my T-Rex skull there.
We've got ours on the go here too. We just did our first layer. So after we put in our cereal, we stuck our little dinosaur toy in the side there and pushed it up against the edge of the jar so that we could see it when we look through. So you know, this is a little Dilophosaurus here. It's early Jurassic in age. So I'm going to call this first layer my Jurassic layer. And when you've got that layer done, you can go on with your next step. So we're going to use our shreddies here to create our next layer. You want to pour that in there, kiddo?
I see that Dana's getting her next layer in there. So Dana, if you could just hold that up.
So
Oh,
I
and good.
my next layer, so I'll show you. I did it on different sides. So I have my first layer, there's my T-Rex skull, and then I'm not sure what kind of sauropod this is, but I have my sauropod in the second layer.
Great.
I'm not sure what that is either.
No, it's kind of hard to tell because it's all one color.
Maybe it's Diplodocus. It's very generic.
Maybe.
And I see Tula and Mayim are moving on. Are you moving on to your second layer? I think I see a second layer there.
Yes.
And do you have some fossils in there?
Yes. Yeah. We have our chickens in there. So mine and I decided to do an experiment. So
Mhm.
we're each trying different ones for the first and second layer, but for the third layer, we're both going to use the Rice Krispies. I for my first layer used the dry oatmeal, and Mayim did the dry rice.
And can you see your fossils in there? Or are they hidden? Your chickens.
My chicken's a little covered
Are
up.
So is mine.
Move it a little bit.
I mean, it's okay if it's covered up. So Jordan, if you were in the field, what would it be like? You can't see all the dinosaurs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. So if you can't see your fossil on the side or your toy or whatnot,
Yes, I could.
that's fine. Often, you know, you could be standing on top of a dinosaur fossil. It might be 10 feet below your feet and you wouldn't even know it. Not all dinosaur fossils, of course, are exposed to the surface. They're often, you know, buried underneath the ground and we have no clue that they're. If we want to find them, we got to dig for them. And so you might be able to do that yourselves doing this activity. It's kind of a challenge. I'm going to show off my next one here. We've got a pterosaur fossil in our bed of shreddies here.
That looks great. And I see a question here. Can I put a piece of bark in? So that's an interesting question. What about bark? Could you find a piece of bark as a paleontologist, as a fossil?
In fact, we do. We do find, in addition to dinosaur bones, we find tree bark and tree trunks preserved in the fossil record. I found some myself, and they often look like wood that was just buried yesterday. It often looks quite fresh. But yes, put a piece of tree bark in because we find trees in the fossil record as well.
And I see a question, what ingredients do we need again? Anything you can layer. So it could be cereal, it could be rice, it could be marshmallows, anything that you want to fill. Jordan had originally used some dirt and rocks, so you could do that. That didn't work quite as well. Dino, what are you using for your ingredients?
I'm using a mixture of two things. So I'm using some cereal, there it is, and I'm using some dry beans. There they are.
Great. And where are you in your layering?
I am working on my third layer. So there it is. I'm not quite sure what kind of dino this is. Kind of hard to tell since it's all one color. But yeah, so these are my layers. I have my T-Rex on the bottom, my sauropod in the middle, and
that looks like a Dimetrodon.
there we go. The mystery has been solved.
Not a dinosaur, but a fossil nonetheless, a popular fossil that we find pretty commonly, I'd say. They lived right before the age of the dinosaurs. Here's our last layer. This is our late Cretaceous T-Rex fossil here, embedded in bran flakes or some such. Mini wheats.
So I ended up having to pause on mine because I realized that I forgot to bring my extra layers down. So I only have one layer with a dragon. Are dragons dinosaurs? Do dragons, can I put a dragon in there?
You know, dragons, we've never found dragon fossils. So dragons are definitely not dinosaurs. I guess technically they'd be vertebrate animals because they've got bones. But they're not dinosaurs, that's for sure. Although some dinosaurs are named after dragons. Some dinosaurs have the word dragon in their name, or Draco. Draco Rex being an example of one.
And Jordan, so there's something called the Kermode dragon. And do you know if that might have existed in the same era as dinosaurs, or is
You
that
mean-
more recent?
You mean the Komodo dragon?
Oh, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Komodo dragon is a type of lizard that's still with us today. It lives on Earth today. And so I don't know very much about the fossil record of Komodo dragons, but there is a relative, it's a type of what we call a varanid, which includes Komodo dragons and their relatives. And the varanid that I'm thinking of, it's a fossil that lived a few million years ago called, well, not even that long ago, called Megalania. And this is a fossil. This was basically a big giant lizard that was many meters long, 4 or 5 plus meters long, that lived in Australia, and probably lived alongside humans, in fact. So a very big, very strange looking animal, but not dinosaurs, although they looked a little bit dinosaur-like. They looked like a T-Rex on 4 feet.
Thank you. So let's just take a quick peek at how Obiaku and Buife are doing. Are you, oh, I see a thumbs up if we could spotlight their video. And so I see you've got 2 layers in there. And do you have any fossils in there? 3 fossils. Okay, we can't hear you, but we can see your symbol. So that looks great. And let's take a look at Shifa's.
Oh yeah, it's all around the same color, so it's a little hard to see.
So I used some of my rock collection rocks in here, and I used some toy dinosaurs. Can you see on the side?
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a little blue dinosaur inside here.
Oh yeah, I see that.
That's great.
And that looks great. And let's take a quick peek with Tula and Mayim, so we can see their final products there.
So I have, can I go first, Maya? Mm-hmm. So I have a little chicken wing right there.
Yep, I see it.
And then I have the tiger head.
Yeah. And the tiger head is in your your top layer, which is the youngest.
I have some bark.
And some bark. And what about Mayim?
But the bark is like this long, the chicken's like this big, and the tiger's like that tall, but
yeah.
Well, I have 3 different things. They're the same color, so it might be a little hard to see. So
yep.
At the bottom, I have a chicken.
Mm-hmm. A dinosaur.
Yeah. And then more over here, I didn't have anything else to put there, so I just put a tiger. Sorry, not a tiger, a wheel. I put a wheel in there for some weird reason. Here's the chicken. So you can see it.
So, yep, that looks great.
The wheel here. Where's the switch?
Great job. So why don't we head over back to Dana so that we can see her final product.
Okay, so I originally had 3 dinos, but I decided to take one out because the beans started to fall and mix in with the Cheerios, and you couldn't really see it. So I decided to just have 2 layers because you can see the dinos better, and I wanted to be able to show them to you. So first on the bottom layer, you can see this T-Rex really, really well. I have my T-Rex skull, my cereal, and then my next layer, I have, what was the name of the dinosaur again, Jordan?
It was Dimetrodon.
Dimetrodon. That's a new one for me, so I have to learn a little bit about that one, but in my hand, I have.
You know the picture. Just keep your mouth quiet.
And so that looks great. And if anyone has their sound still on, we could just ask you all to turn your sound off just so we can have a nice clear sound. So we're finished the activity, and I want to thank everyone for doing the activity with us, but we do have a little bit of time for some questions for both Dana and for our paleontologist, Jordan. And so I am just going to head over to some of those questions. And we are going to start off with a question for either of you. Anyone can jump, either of you can jump in how big was uh-oh, I don't know how to pronounce this, Quetzalcoatlus baby?
Quetzalcoatlus.
Oh, thank you.
Dana knows it.
Tricky one.
Yeah, what was the question? How big was a Quetzalcoatlus?
Baby.
Oh, a baby. Oh, that's a good question. Well, first of all, Quetzalcoatlus was my pterosaur fossil is quite buried here and kind of covered, but Quetzalcoatlus is one of these flying reptiles. Think of something like a pterodactyl or a pteranodon that most people think of, but it was a huge one. It had a 40-foot wingspan. It was the size of a small airplane. But how big was the Quetzalcoatlus baby? We really don't know because we have never found Quetzalcoatlus eggs. But I can tell you this, we do know that pterosaurs laid eggs, and we do know that eggs can only get to be a certain size before they don't work anymore. And so the biggest you can get an egg is maybe the size of a medium-sized bowling ball. So whatever you can fit in that would have probably been about the size of a Quetzalcoatlus baby. So, it might have weighed a few pounds. They're pretty lightly built, but they wouldn't have been very big. They would have been pretty cute. Would have maybe fit in your hands.
So my next question is for both of you. Maybe we can start off with Dana and then we can head over to Jordan after. How many different kinds of dinosaurs are there from my import Coquitlam?
Well, that is a very good question. And there have roughly have been discovered 1,200 dinos, but those are not all of them. Like Jordan said before, we haven't discovered all life on Earth. It's less than 1%. So there is much more out there to be found.
Yeah, good answer, Dana. Yeah, there's about 1,200, 1,500. It depends on who you ask. Some people consider some species not to be valid anymore, and it depends on who you ask. But it's over 1,000 certainly. And I think it's important to remember. I mentioned earlier that dinosaurs, or I mentioned earlier that birds are dinosaurs, and there's over 10,000 species of birds with us today. And dinosaurs lived over beyond 150 million years. And so, if you think about it, there would have been tens and thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dinosaurs out there that we just don't know anything about. So we're still finding new ones all the time.
Okay, so this question is for either of you who know the answer. How old could a dinosaur live to be? So humans can live to be maybe 100, even more than 100. How old were dinosaurs?
You want me to take that one? Do you have a guess, Dana?
I'm not sure, but my guess is that they didn't live to be very, very old because of all the predators around them. That's what I'm guessing, because what I've learned from my dino experiments is that dinosaurs run into a lot of predators during their day-to-day. So maybe I'm not going to give a number, but I'm not going to say they live to be super, super old. I'm going to say relatively young.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Zoo animals live longer than their counterparts in the wild because they're well fed and there's no predators, right? So that's a good answer. And often it's hard to give a direct answer to that question because often we don't really know how long a lot of dinosaurs lived. But there are some examples. Let's take everyone's favorite dinosaur, or most people's favorite dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus Rex. We know a lot about T-Rex. We've cut open its bones and we can count the growth rings inside of its bones and tell how old T-Rex could live to be. And after studying the bones of T-Rex and counting the growth rings, just like a tree, we've learned that T-Rex probably lived to be about 25 or 30 years old. And we've never found a T-Rex older than that. So, T-Rex was a big animal. It weighed maybe 8 tons. It was 40 feet long. And yet it didn't live to be very old like an elephant. Elephants can live, 80 years or more. T-Rexes lived very fast and hard lives. They only lived to be about 25 or 30 years old. And a lot of other dinosaurs probably lived at that age too. So we don't know of any dinosaurs that were like 300 years old. Most of them appear to have died pretty young. Maybe they had a lifespan like that of a human being, and maybe not much older.
Thank you. So we have time for probably 2 more questions, maybe 3. So the next question is, are there any dinosaurs that can defeat a T-Rex? And that question is for either of you.
I'm gonna give a guess. My guess is yes. If dinosaurs possibly fought the T-Rex in herds, safety in numbers, right? So maybe dinosaurs in herds, like for example, Triceratops, could defeat a T-Rex.
Yeah, there is some evidence that Triceratops lived in herds. We have found them together, preserved together, maybe little family units. And of course, Triceratops has those big horns coming off over the eyes. So those horns were probably used to fend off predators like T-Rex. So I agree with, I think some Triceratops could ward off a T-Rex. I would go and I would say an Ankylosaurus would do pretty good at that too. These are the armored dinosaurs with the big clubs on the ends of their tails. I think one, solid blow to the shins of a T-Rex would probably cripple it. And I've done some studies on Ankylosaurus before, and one thing we don't often see on their fossils are bite marks. Lots of other dinosaurs have bite marks on their fossils, horned dinosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, but Ankylosaurus especially don't have very many bite marks on their bones. And I think there's probably a very good reason for that, because I think most predators knew not to mess with an ankylosaur.
Great. So, and Jordan, we had talked about this before, and I think you had said that in some ways it's almost like an anything goes question, because almost any dinosaur could have taken out a T-Rex. Is that right?
Well, I mean, we don't know how these fights would have gone 100% of the time. It's like, sometimes a lion is successful at taking down a gazelle, and sometimes a gazelle is successful at getting away or maybe giving it a boot to the chin. And so there's no right answer on these questions. I'm sure Tyrannosaurus sometimes killed Triceratops, and I'm sure Triceratops sometimes killed T-Rex. So yeah, there's no definitive answer to the question, but they're fun questions to ask anyways.
Yes. Okay, we have 2 more questions that I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask for a quick response to this first one, just because I want to make sure we've got time for the next one. And this is, how tall is the tallest dinosaur?
Ooh.
Do either of you know that or have an idea?
I know that one of the tallest dinosaurs is an animal called Brachiosaurus, which we dig up here. We dig up in the United States, and there are very close relatives of Brachiosaurus that we find in places like Tanzania as well. And they stand, I've seen their skeletons in museums, and they can reach up to a 3-story building. I'm looking outside. Yeah, a 2 or a 3-story building. So they can be really, really tall if they stretch their necks way up high. So those would be some of the tallest dinosaurs, would be, of course, these long-necked sauropods that could look into your bedroom window without batting an eye.
And Dana, have you seen any of those in any museums anywhere?
I haven't seen a Brachiosaurus. Hopefully I will someday. But like Jordan mentioned before, the Royal Ontario Museum, right in their lobby, they have a huge Diplodocus. And I'm sure most sauropods are very, very, very tall, like the Brachiosaurus. So I'm sure the Diplodocus No, it's not the Diplodocus in the lobby. Sorry, I got mixed up. It's the Footolonchosaurus. I'm sure I'm sure a lot of dinosaurs, I'm sure that's a pretty tall dinosaur. I'm pretty sure it's pretty high up in the list. But hopefully I'll see a Brachiosaurus or one day.
Great. So this is our last question. This is kind of a cool one that I wasn't anticipating. So it might be a harder question, but I'm going to ask Dana, have you seen the movie Jurassic Park?
I saw, I think maybe the most recent one. It's still on my list. I have to watch all the original ones.
I think you're going to love them. So one of our participants asked if a dinosaur could ever be brought back to life. So she said, in the movie Jurassic Park, there were mosquitoes trapped in amber, and the mosquitoes had blood from the dinosaurs. And so could that ever be possible, like in that movie? So Jordan, what do you think?
I wish it were true, but it's not true. We do find, insects preserved in amber. That much is true. Many of the insects we know about preserved in amber actually post-date the dinosaurs. That is to say, they're younger than the dinosaurs. They're higher in the geological record. But we do know of biting insects in amber that are preserved from, for example, Cretaceous rocks that would have lived with the dinosaurs. The problem with the idea of getting blood from, let's say, a mosquito that fed on a dinosaur is, first of all, the job of a mosquito's stomach, just like the jobs of our stomachs, is to break down whatever gets inside and turn it into nutrition so that the body can use it. And so if a mosquito swallowed blood, its stomach would pretty quickly break down the DNA within the blood and make it unusable for any sort of experiments to bring dinosaurs back. And not only that, but DNA, which is sort of the what we call the genetic code. It's the building blocks of life. DNA is a very, what we call a volatile molecule. It's very weak. It's held together very lightly, and it's lightly, I should say, and it's very easy to break up. And so for a piece of DNA to survive, 66 million years in the stomach of a mosquito, it just wouldn't happen. DNA doesn't live that long. It breaks up very quickly, especially when there's water around, which is very common if we're trying to preserve fossils. So for that reason, yeah, we're not able to bring a dinosaur back to life, and I don't think we ever will be. And it pains me to say that, from the bottom of my heart, but I just don't think it's going to happen, at least not in our lifetimes, but we can keep our fingers crossed. Larissa, you're on mute. There you go.
Trying to unmute. Thank you so much for clearing that up for us. So we're going to wrap the session up here. I just want to start out by thanking our members who had their videos on to demonstrate the activity with us. I'm going to start off with Tula and Mayim, if we could just spotlight them and they can give us a wave. So can we, there we go.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And I'm going to send it over to Shifa next, if we can spotlight her. Thanks, Shifa. And we're going to go over to Obiaku and Buife.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And so I'm going to send out also a big thank you to Catherine from CAGIS National, and also thank you to Dr. Jordan Mallon from the Canadian Museum of Nature, who gave us such interesting information about dinosaurs and paleontology. And last but definitely not least, I think our most exciting participant today. Thank you so much, Dino Dana. I'm going to send it over to you for a goodbye.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun, and I hope you enjoyed doing the experiment. I know I did.
Me too.
Thank you for all your help in answering all of my questions too, because I seem to have a lot of questions in today's session.
Dana, you're a very good paleontologist in training, and to all the girls who joined us, I think the same thing. I loved the rock records, the fossil records we built today, and I had a lot of fun, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
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 Bye.